Hey guys, it's Lohpally here, and today we got a new video, and today we're going to be talking about our 11.2 tier list. Now, the main thing is this tier list is designed for solo queue players involved, usually around silver to platinum, but the upper echelons of diamond, and the format for this is mostly about how easy they are to pick up and how powerful they are when you pick them up quickly. So, without further ado, we're going to be showing you, kind of scrolling up, what our B tier is and moving on from there. Anything that's in the D or C tier, for the most part, I'm not recommending. And you'll probably see a familiar face there, which is going to be Malachi. And the reason why Malachi is going to be moved down to the C tier list after being a pretty elite pick for a while is for a couple of reasons. Number one, he does poorly against enchanters, and I feel like the turning point for more people to be playing ranged champions is going to be on this patch in this season going forward, and Malachi does quite poorly into all those, so he's already at a lane at disadvantage in most cases, plus they usually have a healer shield to deal with most of his poke, plus Mandate is being nerfed in terms of its damage output on an individual level, and Malachi saplings are also getting nerfed. So with all these combined nerfs to Malachi, he's going to be dropping in the tier list for me a lot. I used to have him about in the A tier where he was pretty close to elite, just had some matchup problems where he could be S tier but not always S tier. So yeah, he's moved back down to the C tier with a lot of other poke-oriented or AP-like champions. And then most of our D tier is just what I call the Guardian users, champions that mostly just sit there and defend people and are pseudo-tanks. But for the most part, there's other champions that are usually tankier and have more initiative and ways to start off fights. And their itemization is just not great right now. So moving into the B tier list, these are champions that I would categorize as functional, but not super overpowered, and depends on their power level depending on how much time you invest in all of these champions. Some of these champions are a lot more proficient the better you are at them, and that's why it's really important for me to predicate it on the fact that even if you might be bad at these champions at the start, these champions can be a lot more powerful when you put time into it. The amount of time that you invest into it and how powerful they are really does predicate on how I want to do tier lists, because I always want this tier list to be for people who maybe even just returning to League and haven't played in a while. So as you can kind of see right here, we have like a lot of the tank and snow bully like champions like Pantheon and Set, who need like really huge leads and need to play consistently aggressively, kind of feel like weak as you move into the mid game unless you get huge leads or your teammates are playing with you. A couple people are always interested in champions like Alistar. I think Alistar is not bad, but there are champions that do more damage and are a bit tankier, and the fact that he has to take phase rush basically predicates the problem that he already has, which is that his E is really hard to get off of, and that also means that he's quite squishy in a lot of matchups. Outside of that, things like Nautilus, Nico, Rakan, these champions either have not enough damage or not enough tankiness as the game goes on. They seem to have like a lot of power maybe in one spot, but not enough as an overall and well-rounded champion. And then champions like Zillion are starting to fall off just because of the fact that his itemization is kind of poor, and his lane phase against a lot of matchups just isn't really that great. Blitzcrank has a lot of difficulties where he's very linear, and the fact that you have to be constantly hitting hooks is pretty much his only power. I like Blitzcrank in some matchups or some scenarios where the enemy team has a ton of squishies, but in a lot of cases you don't get that luxury, so he's kind of just down here in the B tier too. Also, I was playing a lot of Nami, but as I've moved further and further on, it feels like there's a lot of difficulty with a lot of high mobility champions that this champion struggles with. Plus, she has mana problems in the early stages, and on top of that, Mandate has been nerfed significantly. Also, champions like Bard have kind of fallen down by the wayside also, on top of champions like Janna, just because of the problems that are going to occur when the Mandate gets a built-in cooldown reduction for the damage that you deal. It means that you'll have a lot less damage availability for these champions. And champions like Zyra haven't been too fond of, like Vel'Koz also, just because they need so many items to be quite powerful. It's another problem that things like Swain run into, and even Morgana to a lesser extent. And since Lux doesn't have any Athenes to build anymore, itemization for her also kind of became pretty problematic. All these champions are relatively functional and you can still play them. They're fun and like they won't hold your team down significantly, but there are significantly better picks as we move into the other higher tier list, which is going to be our A tier. So A tier basically means that they're universally powerful and that you'll probably want to be picking them quite frequently. Some of these A tier picks are more situational, and it's mostly predicated on my prediction that more people are going to curve to a certain side of the game. So with the invention of Moonstone and now Staff of Flowing Water kind of going around and people being more open to maybe potentially not always playing AD carries bottom lane, I think that most tanks will die by the wayside. The ones that don't are these couple that are in the higher echelon of the tier list, which are champions like Gallia, who can peel and CC a lot, and he has a lot of flexibility in team compositions just because of the fact that the ulti can be used defensively and offensively. Combined with the fact that he actually has like a pretty good amount of mobility and damage, I like him as still a tank just because of his flexibility all around. Now, other champions you can kind of see right here are mostly Moonstone users, as we can see Karma, Lulu, Karma, Yumi, Soraka, and Sona. All these champions use Moonstone exceptionally well, and there's even individual buffs going on to Soraka in the future. These champions struggle sometimes into certain tank matchups or in the early stages of laning phase, but if you can get them into the team fight stage without getting run over, these champions are incredibly powerful since they have extra healing or shielding that supplements the fact that the Moonstone is cycling heals. Since these all empower your champions really, really well, I'm predicting that these champions are going to come out as the forefront. These champions might run into some issues where playing against, maybe you're a Sona versus a Pantheon or a Nautilus, and you might struggle in that case. But in most cases, if you can just get through the early game stages, these champions will be powerhouses when grouping. And I think that as we move forward, more and more tankier champions and frontline champions will be picked in other roles, and this will amplify the powerfulness of these champions who will be going Moonstone into Staff of Flowing Water. Now, in transitioning from that, though, is going to be kind of like our damage bread and butter. So Brand and Senna. So Senna actually does exceptionally well into a lot of enchanters because of a couple of things. Number one is that she's going to be receiving some buffs to a couple of her stats in the next patch, and the fact that she has really flexible itemization. You can go things like Shield Bow and build full crit. You can even also go Armor Pen, so Dust Blade into Rapid Fire is completely fine, or you can actually just build Moonstone on her too. So depending on your situation, you can actually add a lot of flexibility and utility to your team. And the fact that Senna does well into other ranged champions. So Senna likes to be trading quite frequently to farm souls and become powerful. That's kind of her momentum power in a lot of situations. On top of the fact that she has an ulti that she can shoot across the map. So that means that if there's a scenario where a lot of enchanters are being picked bottom lane, it's not all about you, and being able to impact the other side of the map is quite powerful. And then Brand comes in as one of the premier DPSers, in my opinion, over a champion like Zyra, just because he can actually do a lot of damage without needing a lot of items, since his passive procs off of % health, and it's very easy for him to spread a ton of damage and actually put healing reduction on a lot of people. His power is really, really there, and if you ever get ahead, it's super easy to snowball on this champion. Plus, if you end up finding yourself incredibly far behind, because the dot is ticking quite frequently, you can also opt into going something like a Moonstone if you really want to, and the dot ticking on enemy players will allow you to proc the Moonstone for long periods of time. This is mostly just to predicate that this will mostly be an enchanter-like meta as tanks start to fall behind and not be able to keep up with the grouping power that people are going to be getting in the near future. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the S tier, which are the elite picks, and we don't have any S pluses this time just because I feel like S plus and S were kind of the same for me. So these are going to be the 3 elite picks that are coming out in the new season, which is going to be Leona, Seraphine, and Lulu. Now, each of these do incredibly different things for your team compositions, and each of them are powerful for their own different purposes. Lulu is really great because of how easy it is for you to pick up this champion, plus the fact that you have the option to go lock it on her, so you can deal with assassins or diving champions really, really easily. On top of that, Aphelios has started becoming a very prevalent and popular pick too, so Lulu pairs incredibly well with that champion, so now you have both Lulu and Kai'Sa as really great pairings for you on top of Aphelios, so that you can just be pairing well with the most prevalent and most commonly picked AD carries. This champion is just great for peeling and durability, and she's honestly really, really flexible because she crushes other tank supports really, really well because you can just go Guardian, Bone Plating, and you're actually an immovable rock, and usually it's very hard for your AD carry to die because of this. Leona comes in as one of the elite picks just because of the same purpose but kind of moving over to tanks. Leona actually can have good favorable matchups into a lot of enchanters, plus she scales really well into the late game because of her bonus armor and MR on her W. So because of this flexibility and having enough damage to actually punch through healing and shielding a lot of times, she can be incredibly powerful too. You can run into some issues where maybe you get too far behind and this champion can struggle, but in a lot of cases, if you're looking for snowbally like champions and don't want to risk it all in the first 5 minutes like Pantheon support, Leona's going to be your pick right now because she has a lot of lockdown CC and tons of damage. And then coming in is Seraphine, which is a really great disengaged champion. She scales probably the best of the three, actually, as an individual champion. Obviously, Lulu and Aphelios together are a lot stronger, but Seraphine scales really well into the late game just as an individual champion. You have tons of flexibility when it comes to build paths here. You can go Moonstone, Staff of Flowing Water. Locket is not unreasonable too if there's a lot of champions that are diving you in most cases, and even after the nerfs, Mandate will still be a good source of damage if you feel like you need more AP push. Now, because of all this flexibility and all the crowd control she's with her kit, she'll be really, really good. And the fact that most of the time there's usually melee champions on both sides, but at least one of the sides. So either you're ulting a champion that's diving in, like a Hecarim, or you're ulting off of your teammate, like an Olaf that's going on them, and you can extend your ultimate. I think in general, Seraphine probably squeaks in as my S+ right now just because of the fact that she's so powerful, but she is a skill shot oriented champion, and sometimes getting through laning phase can be a little bit difficult on this champion, so she does need some practice when it comes to laning phase for aiming her skill shots since they're relatively slow. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment in the section below, and hit that bell and whistle. I'll see you next time. Peace.